So, a little bit about Mercedes and why we chose this venue. Really, it's a synergy between how Formula One works and how they use data to always improve the performance of their sport. So for Formula One, every second counts. So why shouldn't every second count for your businesses as well? More likely measured in hours and weeks rather than seconds, so those small cut-offs. But every bit of data that they feed in, the amount of data on a Formula One car, over 200 sensors on the car, telling them every time how they adjust the strategy. That goes back to engineers that are based in the different countries for different manufacturers, and they are making strategy changes and calls all the time because they have that data available to them. So hopefully what we're going to show you a little bit of synergy today is how we can show you what data and how data can work with your businesses to give you the tool sets to be able to make those changes. Then some package processes that are already there, and those are the ones that are fundamentally always around. So we're going to show you how those will work. And then the biggest problem is how you implement that kind of thing into your organization. Organization's always busy, so line of business owners find it really hard to be able to take something that they need to the business and say, right, we need this in this time scale. So our approach as an organization, and I know most of you work with us already, so you understand us. We see the long-term business results that you're going to need to gain are going to come from us helping you with workflow. As a managed print service organization, I'm hopeful you'll all agree we do an excellent job. And what we want to do is now look at how we can improve on that and what the next evolution is around following the market trends around digital transformation and how we work with you on that. And really we take a data-centric and people approach. So we like to communicate. We've got a set of business analysts. Where's Nick? Nick heads up our business analyst team. So he'll be engaging with you guys, understanding, doing these workflow pieces. We formed a good partnership with Newfield IT, which is a Xerox company, and their tool sets, and then obviously with Xerox themselves around the workflow. And we've got Andy Jones here today helping us do it. And really, the analytics is the insight that is going to give us the ability to actually transition documents. Really hard to make a decision around what you need to do until you really understand the processes. And it's really hard to understand those processes because day to day, you've got to do your job, and you need to understand, from my point of view, running our business, I need to understand what's happening within the organization. It's really hard for me to try and gather that without sitting down with every piece, every department and understanding what they're doing. So we will help you on that journey by putting the right analytics and giving you that ability. So just some stats around here around organizations and percentages. 50% of every printed page is thrown away. If you were a business that had any other process that half of whatever you produced got destroyed, you'd really start looking at that process. So the question is, why don't people do it more so around the documents that are printed? Because they are essentially the documents that run your organization. And we're going to show you methodologies and how we can help you reduce that 50 to a much more sensible figure. And picking up on that, I'm going to introduce Andy Jones. Andy's VP for Workflow for Xerox globally, and he's going to talk a little bit about the marketplace and digital transformation. Andy.
Morning, great to be here. My driving experience coming here on the M4 and the M25 was pretty grim, so hopefully you'll have a better one this afternoon on the track. And Justin and Marc asked me to just share with all of you, 15 minutes on our perspective of what's happening in the market, and particularly, this whole thing around digital transformation. So as Marc said, I work for Xerox worldwide. I head up a business unit with the imaginative name of Workflow Automation. So I don't have anything to do with our devices, but a lot to do with software and solutions that actually, as a company, we've been taking to market with our customers for many years. And it was 4 years ago we decided we better focus on this because, print is going away. and we need some new revenue streams as a corporation. So we set up the workflow business unit, and I was lucky enough to be appointed to lead that. And it's been an amazing journey, meeting people like yourselves, talking about how these software solutions can help improve business. I have yet to have a CIO say to me, actually, Andy, we're not really interested. We want to go back and do things the way we're doing them before. Everyone's interested, but everyone's struggling with the same issue. Where do I start? How do I make practical steps forwards and improvements inside the business? How do I help my organization change? You know, rarely are there technical problems. I mean, occasionally there are technical problems, but the bigger issues are about how do I get my organization to change and work in different ways. So there's a whole series of factors around this that are important. Anyway, so a few thoughts. There is a bit of a perfect storm happening at the moment. I mean, if you step back and look at not only what's happening at work, but just look at what's happening in society, really, with us today. So we've got an incredible technology shift happening. It's barely been 5 years that we've had smartphones, tablets, whatever you want to call them, available, affordable, usable. And what's interesting is it's taken 65 years to shorten that 5 years, because these devices wouldn't be usable without all the thinking that's gone into simple things like networking. You know, how do we get networking reliable, cheap? How do I get networking wireless? How do I get networking global? You know, if we hadn't solved all the networking problems, your smartphone would be pretty useless as it is today. Miniaturization of technology. You know, that's something else that's been racing along, something that Xerox themselves have taken, you know, our part in developing that. We pioneered miniaturization of laser technology back in the late 80s, early 90s. So there's a whole load of things that have now given technology a massive jump forwards in the last 5 years. Cloud, you know, everyone's sort of, okay, it's on the cloud. But if you actually go and think about what has to be in place to make cloud computing work, it is pretty amazing. There's a very interesting book that draws a comparison between the development of the electrical power generation industry and cloud computing. And you read the book, there's 2 or 3 books actually do a similar comparison. It's fascinating. You know, in the early days, if I had a factory, I would buy my own generator and generate my own electricity. And it took many years for people to trust the supply of electricity to come from the grid. And this first happened in Chicago. That was the first town in the world that it came from the grid. So if you then think about that, okay, I have my own computer, I'm in control of the on-off switch, and I'm in control of where I store everything and things like that. And now someone comes along and says, well, actually, I want you to store all your information up in this nebulous thing called the cloud. Don't worry, trust me, it's all going to be safe and good. Absolute one-to-one comparison between what the evolution of the electrical power generation industry and what's happening inside the cloud. The cloud is going to take over what we're doing. It's only a case of time until we get more comfortable about security aspects of that and large corporations do it. Why is cloud so good? It's easy. You know, you don't have to be a high-tech expert to go and gain access to these wonderful resources. Someone else is looking after those behind the scenes. So cloud is also going to accelerate the uptake of all this stuff. Demographics is also an interesting thing. So I'm a baby boomer, so I can remember writing stuff on paper and giving them to a secretary for the secretary to type on a typewriter. I can actually remember that when I first started work. I can remember the first word processor coming into a department. Same process, hand the secretary the paper, but she types it now on this machine that can erase things without having to use Tipex and print them. And then, you know, we had our own personal computers and things like that. Today, you know, you look at our young children who are born digital, you know, they get a book, a physical book, and they're trying to swipe the book in the same way that they would swipe a tablet. So there are massive behavioral changes coming through the generations, and people, you know, we all will demand to work in these new ways inside our work environment. And then the final thing that also is part of the perfect storm, yeah, we're getting more creative about what work is. You know, it's no longer where I go, it's what I do, independent of where I am. And so mobile working, not just mobile working physically, but mobile working time-wise. I happen to get up particularly early in the morning, do a little bit of work then, spend a bit of time having some breakfast with the family, carry on working in the day. I work quite late in the evenings because I've got a US side of the business, if I'm not in the States, that I have to deal with. So this technology lets me work in a lot more flexible way. All these things are what's driving this digital transformation coming together. The issue is, how can we apply this to our businesses to transform them and make them more competitive as well? And in fact, if you look at some of the new companies that are being created, Airbnb, who heard of that 5 years ago? No one. Airbnb is, taking over a lot of the hotel industry. It is a competitor to the hotel industry. Uber, interesting ruling about how Uber people are employed in the UK. Fair enough, but Uber is an app, which has totally transformed the way in which you move around towns. All this stuff has become possible because of the digital transformation. So, it's a wonderful opportunity for change. Could be a bit threatening if you're living in the past. So, what's all that got to do with print, you might ask yourself? Well, what's quite interesting is, actually the volume of pages being printed is still going up. It's quite interesting. So we did some work 3 years ago. We did a study with our ethnographers to really ask the question, so why do people print? Something you would have thought Xerox knew the answer to a little bit before that, but we went off and looked at it. And we found there were really two major reasons. People print for themselves. So this is to help me to store information, believe it or not, still today in paper, to help me annotate and develop my thinking, to officially read information. I'm going to take a piece of paper with me, which I still do myself. Sometimes I find it easier reading paper than even off my nice little iPad screen and things like that. Or people print for others. So they print for others as part of some business collaboration. I want something signed. Here are my notes, take a read of that, what do you think? So collaboration is the second aspect of that. And they're doing that as part of a structured business process, or they're doing that as part of my casual working. So really paper is the glue that helps bind all this stuff together. And the other issue with paper, and why paper is still printing, actually it's sometimes quite difficult to replicate what you do on paper digitally, because information's in silos, it's difficult finding information, and the actual process of transferring unstructured text into structured text is actually quite complex as well. So I think all these reasons are why paper pervades and continues. And I think, as I'll come and talk about in a moment, as we go into the world of digitization, we need to find ways, we need to find slicker ways of overcoming that. So therefore, understanding why people print and what people are doing with that information is a key stepping stone in helping transform your business process. So as a company, that's why we've invested a lot of money in Newfield IT's type technologies and assessment services that lets us take a view through a print lens of an organization and gain insights from why people are printing what, to lead us to the point of saying, well, maybe there are some business process issues here that we can be helped by implementing different ways of working, software-enabled ways of working, and therefore avoiding the need to print. The whole thing joins together. So let's talk about digitalization. Interesting topic, something that, well, it's my business really. So if we look at history, most of how most established organizations work is on the assumption that paper is used to power the business, right? If you look at most business processes, I would contest, in most organizations are designed around the fact that it is paper or paper-structured information that is moving through the process. It is the carrier of information inside the process. It's how humans interact with the data inside the process. It also becomes the integration between systems within that. So in the 90s, suddenly we invented scanning, and the world of paper is over. It was declared, we're going to have the paperless office, no more paper, we're going to scan everything. And so off we went, developing scanning software. And suddenly I no longer need the paper because I'm looking at a picture of paper on my computer screen. So great, I don't need the physical paper. Many people can access that at the same time. I can move it at the speed of light, and everything's hunky-dory. If you actually look at what impact that had on how businesses interacted with that information, very little change. Because the information is still unstructured. It's just a picture as opposed to a physical piece of paper. And also the business process, which was using this information, the DNA of that process is still the same. It hasn't fundamentally changed because it's using the paper to convey information around that. Massive benefits in terms of digitizing paper. But now, as we go and look forwards to this new technology, and particularly smartphones and tablets, who give an experience in accessing data that is close to paper. It's a lot easier interacting with data on a tablet than it is on your PC, for example. That is what's really driving the transformation. I've got a little saying which is really from pages to apps. So the app on your smartphone becomes the new representation of the paper in your old world. That enables you to totally change the way in which you run and orchestrate a business process. So let me give you a simple example. We do a lot of work in the financial services industry, insurance, highly competitive market, user experience, very important aspect of insurance companies being competitive. If you look at the old car insurance claims process, if we go back to here, I've had an accident, I ring my broker up, my broker sends me a form, I fill out the form telling them who I am, what my car is, where I was when the accident happened, little picture of what went wrong, fill out the claim, send the form back, and eventually, something happens. So fast forwards, 2000, great, the insurance company's now we're on the web, we've got a website, I've now had my accident, oh, don't ring the broker, go onto the website, start your claim from the website. Great. So what do? I go on the website, I download a form, a PDF. It's exactly the same as a paper form, filling out all the same information, most of which the insurance company actually knows about me. Yeah? It knows my address, it knows the car that's insured, it knows where I live, it knows my driving license information and things like that. I'm just having to re-enter that information because the claims process that receives that information doesn't have access to my records that the company had when it issued the policy. So, okay, it's now electronic, but actually the process itself is now is actually the same. Fast forward, so we've developed some apps for some insurance companies for insurance claims processing. The first thing I do when I have my accident, I don't ring the broker, I don't go on the website, I download the app or I turn my app on. And the app says, what do you want to do? I want to make a claim. And the very first thing I enter into that app is information about the claim, the incident, because it knows who I am, it knows what my address is, it knows what the car is that I was insured, because it's online, it's connected into the data sources within that. So suddenly, we have a totally different business process than what we've seen before in our paper-based world. That's really digital transformation. That's what we're all grappling with inside our businesses. It's big change, it's exciting change, but it can also be scary change. And I see many companies now making decisions about what part of their business is going to gain the most benefit from applying this type of technology. So rather than universally applying it across the whole organization, where are the important areas inside my business that are going to either help me grow my revenue and or reduce my costs to therefore improve my overall P&L within that.